Hi, katzcradul here. This is a video to show you how to can jalapeno peppers. In fact, you can use this method for canning any kind of hot peppers. I'm going to preserve them in several different ways. Here are some on the dehydrator, and I'm pointing to a pepper that has some orange on it. There's nothing wrong with that pepper. It has just begun to mature. In fact, here are two peppers in various stages of ripeness. A mature pepper is on the left. It will often be orange or red. And then the immature pepper, the one we're most used to seeing in our grocery store, is here on the right, and it's solid green. You'll notice I'm wearing sandwich bags on my hands. I have run out of gloves. I need to go buy another box, but sandwich bags work very well. You do not want to get these jalapeno peppers on your hands. I did day before yesterday, and my hands burned for 24 hours, even though I thought I was being very careful. So today I'm wearing baggies. Here's the bowl of peppers that I am going to can, and they're ready. They're ready to be processed, but I want to show you just a little bit about how to get them ready and how I cut them up. I always use a cutting board and a very sharp knife, and I cut just a little way up from the stem to get that off. You'll see how much I've cut here, and then the next thing I do is I stand the pepper on end, running my knife long ways all the way down the pepper. I then lay the halved pepper flat on the cutting board, and I take my sharp knife, and I want to take the center section out, the membrane, and I just kind of roll it around that center section and then pull out the membranes and seeds. Lots of people leave that in there, and that's just fine. It's really hot, but the peppers that I'm going to can, I just don't think they look as pretty with the seeds in them. And also the dehydrated peppers, I'm going to grind in my blender when they're dry to make jalapeno pepper powder, and I definitely don't like the seeds in there, so I just take the seeds out of my peppers. Now here's the pepper I just cut. This is half of the pepper. And you're looking at the end of it, and you can see it's kind of C-shaped. Sometimes you get some of the smaller ones, and they really are very U-shaped. That's fine for dehydrating, but it's not for canning because I can't pack very many in a jar like that. So I lay my pepper down, and I cut it one more time long ways so that my pepper is actually cut in fourths. And you can see there's not so much of an arch in those little pieces there. It's going to allow me to pack them in the jars much, much tighter. Now my peppers are all prepared, and I am ready to start the canning process. The first thing I do is I put my jars, now I don't have very many peppers here to can, so I only need a few jars. So I've put them in clean water in the bottom of my pressure canner in order to get really hot. It's not really necessary to sterilize them because they're going to be processed for 10 minutes, and that's really the new rule. If your food is going to be processed for at least 10 minutes, you don't need to sterilize the jars. So this is not really so much for sterilization as it is for getting the jars hot, because I'm going to put cold peppers in the jars, and then I'm going to pour in my hot solution of vinegar and water, and I don't want to take any chance of cracking those jars. So if I'm going to be pouring hot liquid in, I want to be sure it goes into hot jars. Now here's a little metal bowl where I have my bands and my rings soaking in hot water. I have a little bit of a variety here. I have both a couple of small and wide mouth regular lids and rings. And then I also have a couple of the regular size Tatler, the plastic lids, and their little rubber gasket that goes on them. I'm trying to use up some kind of odds and ends here. So I have my peppers ready, and then on the back of the stove I have my vinegar and water solution. And the ratio of that for pickling peppers is, if you've got 6 cups of vinegar, you need 2 cups of water. So that's a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 parts of vinegar to 1 part of water. Now here's a bowl where I have a few little additional flavorings for my pickled peppers. This certainly isn't necessary. All you need to pickle peppers is the vinegar water solution. But I like to add a little additional flavor, so I'm dropping in some little tiny onions that came from my garden, as well as a couple of cloves of garlic in each jar, and about 4 or 5 black whole peppercorns. Like I said, that's not necessary. I just like the way it looks in the jar, and it also flavors it just a bit. The only other thing I add to my peppers is a little salt, and I use a ½ teaspoon for a pint and a full teaspoon for a quart. You certainly can omit that if you need to. Now it's time to start putting the peppers in. I turn the jar on its side, and then I begin putting the peppers into the jar. This is actually the second day I handled these. The first day I handled these peppers when I did it without the gloves, and I went back to show you how I cut them up because I realized I'd failed to tell you that, and that's when I put the baggies on my hands. So this is the day where I caused my hands to really burn. So I just keep shoving these little pieces of jalapeno down into the jar, and I send the pointed end down first, and I really can wedge a lot of them in there. In my opinion, there is nothing that shrinks any more than peppers do. They really shrink when you can them. So I kind of violate the rule of don't fill past a ½ inch. I really fill my jars of peppers absolutely to the top. I push them down as much as I can. And then when you're through canning, there's even still a little bit of room in the jar. So that is the only exception to the rule for me with overfilling the jars with peppers. And I've never had any problem with any of them not sealing. Now it's time to put your funnel in the top of your jar and begin pouring your vinegar solution in. Hopefully you've done a great job packing your jalapenos in, and it won't take much vinegar solution to fill the jar. You want to bring it up almost to the top, leaving just a ½ inch head space, meaning you bring your liquid right up to, there's really 3 rings when you look at the jar. Bring your vinegar up to that middle ring. Then you're going to wipe the rim with a damp paper towel, put your lid and bands on, screwing them on just until you feel resistance, and then lowering them into your canner. Now, peppers packed in a vinegar solution do not have to be pressure canned. I'm just using my pressure canner here because it was the pot that I had out and had been using earlier. So I'm going to use it like a boiling water kettle, and I'm just going to make sure that I cover those jars at least with 1 inch of water above the top of the canning jar. So there's going to be the canning jars are loaded into the canner, and then boiling water is poured on top to cover by 1 inch. When all my jars are loaded into the canner, I put the lid on and wait for the water to return to a full boil. Once it reaches a full boil, I set my timer for 10 minutes. At the end of the 10 minutes, the processing is over. I carefully remove the lid, being sure to lift it away from my face so that the steam goes toward the back of the stove. And then with my jar lifter, I remove the jars from the canner and place them on a towel on my counter. You never want to put hot jars on a cold counter. It might cause them to crack, so always line it with a towel. There I leave my jars undisturbed for 24 hours. After that time, I come back, I check to make sure that they have all sealed, and I remove the rings, wash the jars, and then label them. You can see here I labeled pickled jalapenos and then the date 10/13. They're ready to be stored on my shelf. These peppers are delicious. They're one of the easiest things to can. A lot of people ask me how I use them. I probably use them in a couple of unusual ways. We love these diced up along with raw onion on our grilled cheese sandwiches. We like them diced up on pizza, and in this case you can use both the onions at the bottom of the jar and the jalapenos. You can cut them up on the pizza. I also like to use these jalapenos to cook with meat. Now if you've seen my roast video, you know that in my roast video I always put a tablespoon or so of vinegar in my roast. I learned that from a German woman, and it makes your roast very tender and delicious. So these pickled peppers are great to use when cooking meat. I just love them. I think they're delicious. I mean, you can mince them up on a salad or in salsa or however you like. But if you like jalapenos, they're wonderful. They don't taste quite as intensely hot as fresh ones do to me. I find them mild and delicious. I hope you'll give this a try. It's very easy. Look how beautiful it looks in the jar. You can see the onions and the whole peppercorns and the garlic. It makes a lovely gift, too, for anybody who likes things just a little spicy. I hope you try it. It's super easy. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments section below. And until next time, this is Katzcradul.